In this video, we'll be talking about Amazon sellers paying in Europe. It's a European VAT. It's a tax which everybody has to pay in Europe. And there are a lot of new things introduced in 2021 due to Brexit, and then some extra rules, additional rules in July 2021. In this presentation, our guest Piers Eveleigh from AVASK Group, he will be covering all these topics, and he will explain how you can navigate and improve your Amazon business by being compliant to all these new regulations. And I wanted to mention that this session is sponsored by 3 companies. It's Allsum, Zonguru, and Getida. Allsum is an FBA offer in the description. And finally, Getida is an audit and reimbursement solution for Amazon sellers, and they can help you to get money back from Amazon. And once again, you will find the link below to their offer. And now I would like to introduce our speaker.
Let's get ready for Piers, Eveleigh at the KLIK Box on the chair.
Hi, Piers. Glad to have you here joining us today.
Thanks very much, Lisette, and thank you, Augustus, for having me on. I just wanted to say I'm very impressed with the introduction videos, but as always, it's great to be working with OrangeClick and to be part of such an important event for online sellers. So thank you very much for having us on.
Awesome. So, Piers, before we go into your presentation, could you please introduce what you do and how AVASK Group helps Amazon sellers?
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to see some familiar faces on the registration list. So we have a very long and successful track record, and we now help over 10,000 e-commerce sellers across a wide range of services, which includes VAT compliance, accounting, customs, and also shipping, just to name a few. I think one thing that sort of sets us apart is, I guess, the number of ways in which we can help online sellers with what is now quite a complex Amazon ecosystem.
All right, and what you will share with us in your presentation, can you give me a little bit, give us more details?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to go through today is a bit of a timeline just to bring everyone up to speed with what actually has been happening in the last couple of years. I think everyone's aware it's been a very challenging time for online sellers with everything that's happened with Brexit, COVID, plus the longer term ramifications, and then the new introduction of European regulations. So I'm going to do a quick synopsis of what's happened, and then also look at the new European requirements, and then bring those into context with a few case studies for different types of scenarios that we typically see as the tax agent. And then lastly, I'll be finishing off with some actionable steps and Q&A, which I'm really looking forward to.
Perfect. And this session is part of the KLIK Box Summit, where we are featuring over 20 different Amazon experts. And all of them are giving different bonuses and offers inside the KLIK Box package, which more details you can find below in the description. Also, AVASK is providing a significant discount for their services. We will talk about this at the end of the presentation. Also, in the description, you will find the link to AVASK Group if you want to get in touch with them and help, and if you need their help to sort your European taxes. All right, so we're ready for the presentation.
Thank you very much again for the introduction. And I think I just wanted to start by saying that together over the last few years, we've really faced a truly unprecedented situation. The global coronavirus pandemic has and continues to affect families, businesses, and communities throughout the world. So our heart of AVASK goes out to anyone that's been affected by the virus, either directly or indirectly. I'd say as a company that works primarily with e-commerce sellers and small businesses, we've had a front row seat to the tumultuous changes that have taken place over the last couple of years. And I really just wanted to take a second to say that we understand that these past few years have been particularly challenging for many online businesses. First with the introduction of Brexit, then coronavirus, and now followed by the longer term ramifications that are consistently evolving. We recognise that it's not exactly an easy time to operate at the minute. So what I'll be doing as part of today's session, I'll just be putting some of the most significant changes into context for you as a seller, And what I'll also do is provide some actionable steps which you can take away from today, hopefully. So moving on to Brexit, believe it or not, it's now been over 5 years since the UK voted marginally to leave the European Union. Originally, Brexit was supposed to happen on the 31st of March in 2019. It was then postponed again to the 31st of October, again in 2019. But again, it was then pushed back even further. So my opinion of last year is that because of the historical events, many businesses thought that the 2020 transition period would again be postponed. I'd say especially given the arrival of COVID and the disruption that it had on global economies, working arrangements, and also international trade. I don't think the opinion of it being pushed back again was such a far-fetched thought. But as we all know, this did not happen. And from the 1st of January 2021, the new trading relationship between the UK and EU began. Because of this, the UK is now classified as what's called a third country in relation to the rest of mainland Europe. And this means that new customs borders were introduced as the UK separated from the rest of the single market. It really had quite a huge knock-on effect for thousands of Amazon sellers who, prior to Brexit, had used the UK as a really effective gateway into mainland Europe. And instead, what they now faced was extra regulations, paperwork, and also additional costs to trade between the UK and the rest of the EU. Next, sort of bringing COVID-19, and I really don't want to appear unsympathetic, but I truly believe that in years to come, we will look back at 2020 as the moment that really changed everything in e-commerce. Nowhere else has ever witnessed unforeseen growth occur as it did in the digital and e-commerce sectors during COVID-19. So as lockdowns became the new normal, businesses and consumers increasingly went digital. So they were providing and purchasing more goods and services online, raising e-commerce's share of global retail trade from 14% in 2019 to about 17% in 2020. So I think it would be foolish to whilst that's great, it would be foolish to suggest that, that positive, reaction came without any challenges. And I think one of the main challenges that were seen by a lot of online businesses were supply chains. And I think that continues to be quite a big obstacle for a lot of sellers from the logistics side of things. So delving into logistics, I wanted to talk about the shipping crisis. And I think it is a topic that you could potentially spend all session on because there's really so much to talk about. But what I'll try and do is just break it down into very simplistic terms. So when COVID-19 first emerged and countries started going into the first lockdowns, it was really a completely unknown territory for us all. And this sort of shipping crisis that followed was started at the beginning of COVID-19 in China, who is home of 7 of the 10 largest container ports in the world. They went into lockdown for 2 months, causing exports to decrease significantly. Because of this, a lot of ocean carriers started winding down their operations. So many increased their idle or stationary fleet by up to 15%, meaning that it sort of made sense. With no cargo to ship, there was really no point in sailing the ships. And because people were stuck at home and weren't able to get out to the shops to actually purchase goods, container demand globally dropped by about 15 to 20% in the first 2 quarters of 2020. I'd say what happened next is really what led to a surge in consumer demand and ultimately the astronomical increase that we've all seen in shipping costs. Simply put, consumers that were stuck at home got bored of sitting at home. And I'm a prime example of this case. I mean, we adjusted to upgrading things like our gardens, our home offices, our home gyms. And we found out that we could buy everything that we needed on marketplaces like Amazon and have it turn up within 24 hours in certain cases. But because of the cancelled sailings at the beginning of the pandemic, there were stockpiles of containers which were not easily accessible because of the COVID restrictions. And that shortage of containers essentially gave freedom to shippers to really hike their prices up. And that's why we saw in some cases, shipping rates increasing by up to 500%. Now you couple this, and at the same time, Amazon decides to change its Amazon inventory limitations globally. So it decreased the storage capacity for a lot of sellers in the hope of increasing fulfillment efficiency. So that, as well as the shipping crisis, really added further strain for many sellers as they had to ship smaller consignments, which ultimately costs more as you're not shipping in wholesale amounts. To help with this and the additional costs, as part of the promotional package, we do have 2 promotional incentives, which, again, as Augustus says, we'll discuss that further at the end. But yeah, hopefully that gives a good summary into the issues that we faced on the logistics side of things. And sort of finally on this timeline, we've arrived at what is seen by many as kind of like a silver lining to all of the challenges that have been thrown at online sellers these past few years. And that is the introduction of new European VAT regulations, which were introduced on the 1st of July 2021. What I'll be doing through the rest of the presentation is just running through a few different scenarios and sort of explaining what these changes mean for you as a seller and in which scenarios the schemes are going to be applicable in. So many of you will have heard the terms OSS and IOSS. I think they've been publicised, a tremendous amount over the last couple of months. But essentially, just to break it down, from the 1st of July 2021, these schemes have been able to be used to declare distant sales that are made throughout or into Europe. However, it's not really as simple as everyone just registering, as whether or not you need to register will depend on your business model, as well as other factors. So a few of the main factors that you need to consider are, firstly, where your company is actually registered, where you're incorporated. Second, what you'll have to look at is where your goods are actually stored at the point of sale. Third, you'll have to look at whether an OMP is or has been involved in the transaction at all. And last but not least, you'll also need to consider what the value of the consignment was. So in the next few slides, we'll look at some of the real life case studies that I've seen firsthand this year. And I hope what that'll do is bring the requirements into context for you guys as sellers. So first, as part of this illustration, what we're going to look at is quite a typical case that I see on an often basis, which is a US company, so a company based outside of Europe that makes sales via Amazon pan-EU only. So in this case, the company is based outside of the EU and they make sales via an OMP only. Now, as part of the changes that came into effect on the 1st of July, the OMP, as the deemed supplier, now takes responsibility for the collection and also the remittance of VAT, meaning that for the seller, there is no obligation for registering for OSS, as Amazon report the distant sales through their OSS return. I'd say a common misconception in this case is that due to the introduction of rules of making the online marketplace responsible for VAT collection, is that you as the seller will no longer have VAT registration or VAT filing obligations in Europe. This quite simply is not correct. You will still need to remain VAT registered in each country that you hold your stock, and you're also still required to continue filing VAT returns in each country that you have a VAT registration in, and that can be on a monthly or quarterly basis depending on the country in question. So for any sales you make where Amazon are responsible for the VAT collection, you're essentially now making a 0 rated supply to Amazon domestically per the fulfillment country. And what Amazon will then do, they are making the sale to the end customer. So the conclusion in this case is that the US seller is required to keep their VAT numbers where stock is held, and they'll need to continue filing appropriately. And Amazon, as the OMP, will take on the responsibility for the collection and remittance of VAT. In the second case here, what we'll look at, again, we're going to look at an overseas entity. So I've used the example of a US company. but this time the company makes sales via Amazon Pan EU, as well as their own website sales to European customers. Now, the same principles apply as per the previous case, whereby the OMP Amazon is responsible for the collection and remittance of VAT paid on sales made via Amazon's interface, so the OMP. However, what we see in this case is that the distant sales made via an external platform, like website sales, for example, that's going to be the seller's responsibility to collect and remit the VAT. So VAT will need to be charged in the country of delivery, and these sales can be declared via a single OSS return. Now, in this case, as a non-EU entity, they need to register for OSS in a nominated European country, and that nominated European country does need to be a country where the goods are going to be dispatched from. So the OSS filing will be submitted via this country's OSS portal. And I just wanted to point out another common misconception in this case is that due to the introduction of OSS, people only need to file this single OSS return each quarter. Again, it's not correct. You will need to remain VAT registered in each country that you hold stock in, and domestic sales made within each of those countries, they will need to be declared on that country's VAT return accordingly. So just to illustrate what this looks like, in this example, what we're looking at is the US seller, and they've nominated Germany as their country of registration for OSS. Now, they hold stock in Germany, France, and Poland. And during the filing period, they have sales going from German fulfillment centers to DE customers, from French fulfillment centers to French customers, from a Polish fulfillment center to customers all throughout Europe, and then also from a Polish fulfillment center to Polish consumers. Now, the domestic sales that are made in France, Germany, and Poland, they'll need to be declared on the domestic returns for each country. However, the sales that are fulfilled from Poland to customers throughout the rest of Europe are what's classed as distant sales. So any sale that is classed as a distant sale, in this case, as the sales are facilitated off of an OMP, they're going to need to be declared through the OSS return and filed via the authorities in Germany. So conclusion on this one is that the US seller is required to keep their VAT numbers where the stock is held, and they'll need to continue to file appropriately. Because they've got distant sales off of the OMPs through their own website, they'll also need to register for OSS and file that on a quarterly basis. Now, the last case I want to look at for OSS is for a European-based company. It's important to remember that for European-based companies, OMPs do not actually act as the deemed supplier that are made through the interface for sales that are made through the interface. So, for example, let's take this German company who has passed their 10,000 euro threshold as an example. What they're doing is they're trading on Amazon Pan EU, yet they're also still required to register and file for VAT in all countries where they hold stock. Now, for any distant sales that are made within Europe, whether or not they're via an OMP, the European company will need to report these through an OSS return. And as a European company, they must register for OSS in their company of incorporation. So unlike a non-EU entity that has the choice of electing a country of registration, if you're a European-based business, you need to register for OSS in the country where your company was incorporated. And just to round off the slides on OSS, IOSS, I just wanted to introduce the concept of import one-stop shop as well as the OSS. So it works in a very similar way. So similarly for sellers that sell into Europe via fulfillment methods from a third country, so a country outside of the EU, there's a new method of declaration, and that's called IOSS. I guess just to kick IOSS off, low value consignment relief has been removed, and it's been replaced with a new 150 euro threshold, which a lot of you will probably have heard of. So any sale consignment sent to the EU with a value below 150 euros, can actually incur no import VAT, providing that VAT is charged at the point of sale to the end consumer. So sales of this nature, they can be declared on an IOSS return that works pretty much in the same way as an OSS return works, in where VAT is charged based on the delivery country, and the IOSS return is filed with one nominating tax authority, which again, the non-EU established entity can actually choose a country to elect. So just as an example, a US seller makes sales to customers based in Germany, France, and Italy via their own website, with all of the stock being fulfilled from, let's say, the US, just as example. All of the products are valued under 150 euros. So what that means is that the seller decides to register for IOSS in Germany. Sales are then made to customers based in Germany, France, and Italy, and will have VAT charged to the end customer at 19%, 20%, and 22% respectively. The VAT is then collected by the seller on these orders and will be declared and paid to the German authorities via the IOSS return that is filed in Germany. Now, once this has been filed, the German authorities are now responsible for allocating the VAT that's due in France and also Italy to the relevant authorities. So any sales of this nature with a consignment value exceeding 150 euros, those are going to be subject to the existing rules, which that sort of concerns who the importer of record is for the sale in particular. And then you can look at various different Incoterms such as delivered duty paid, or delivered duty unpaid, or delivered at place, which are also popular Incoterms if you are fulfilling orders from your own website yourself. So that sort of rounds up IOSS and brings us to the Q&A part of the session. I hope that's been a very useful overview into some of the recent implications on the industry and also some of the recent changes that we've seen. And yeah, I welcome any questions that anyone has in relation to these changes.
Thank you, Piers. Indeed, it's very complicated. There are so many different situations you need to look at. So maybe some people looked at your slides and they think, oh, it doesn't apply for my situation. So best if you just contact AVASK directly and they will look at your situation. Links to AVASK are below. And also, before we continue with questions, I wanted to mention that we have this KLIK Box. The link below to the link to the KLIK Box you'll find below in the description. And KLIK Box is a promotion we're doing right now where we negotiated really valuable deals from different companies which are taking part in KLIK Box Summit. And AVASK prepared for us, let's look again what you have for us. It's could you comment what exactly you are offering in the KLIK Box?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to pick up on what you said, Augustus, with regards to the different scenarios. I think personally, I've seen about 16 different scenarios for OSS and IOSS. So there's a lot of different circumstances out there, and no company is the same as another. So I think it is important to realize that it's not going to be the same for everyone. And that, for me, highlights the importance of working with a tax expert that understands, which schemes are applicable in which circumstances. So if anyone does have questions or they're not quite sure how IOSS or OSS would benefit their company, or if they need it, yeah, please do reach out. I'm more than happy to help. Just with regards to the offering that we're giving, we're doing for any attendees today, anyone that registered for KLIK Box Summit, we're doing 50% off VAT registrations for all of the pan-EU countries. We're also doing 50% off registrations for either OSS or IOSS. As well as this, or more of a custom shipping side, we're offering 50% off the sign-up fee for our indirect representation services in the UK and also Europe. And last but not least, we're also offering 50% off the cost of customs declarations if you do require assistance with getting your stock from outside the UK into UK fulfillment centres. So lots of discounts available. And I think one thing we realize is that the Amazon ecosystem is no longer as simple as it used to be. And there's lots of different components that ultimately make up what is now required to run a really successful online business. So we will do our very best to help across a range of services, whether it be VAT, customs. If we can't help with something in particular, it's very likely that we work with an external partner. So we work alongside a number of professional connections that can help with things like currency transfers, content creation, PPC ads, troubleshooting issues. So lots of different ways which not only AVASK, but also our wider network of partners can assist.
Perfect. So you will find the links to KLIK Box and to AVASK below in the description. And I would like to mention that if you like content like this, don't forget to click the like, subscribe, all the buttons you see below the video. And now, Lisette, do you have any questions?
Yes, of course, we do have questions because there are things to clarify. So let me take the first one over here. So Piers, do sellers have to do anything in Seller Central settings due to VAT changes?
It's quite a broad one because certain countries have decided that, or Amazon's decided for certain countries with the changes that have come into effect that certain documents no longer need to be uploaded, and other documents that previously weren't required on Seller Central do now need uploading. So what I would say is that question is very specific to the country that you need assistance with. We can certainly give you recommendations and advice based on what we know about Seller Central. So if you want to get in touch with us and have a conversation about the different countries where you have a Seller Central account, then we can advise as to what you need to upload and also as to where you need to upload it to on your Seller Central.
Okay, very good. So let's take another one. So when do I need to apply for VAT when I start using Amazon's Pan-EU program to sell products in different EU countries?
Really good question. So when you're using Pan-European, you're essentially locking into Amazon's distribution channel, whereby you will be able to send a bulk order of inventory or stock to any chosen fulfillment center throughout Europe. Once your goods have arrived in that fulfillment center, Amazon will then proactively move or transfer your stock into other European countries where they have fulfillment centers. So as part of the Pan-European program, you have Amazon's main markets being Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and also the two fulfillment countries, Poland and Czech Republic. Now, whilst we've just had the European VAT changes, the main trigger for VAT is still the same. So the main trigger for VAT has always been when you're storing physical inventory in a marketplace, you need to be VAT registered. When you're using Pan-European, your inventory is going to be located in all of the countries where Amazon has fulfillment centers. So what you need to do as a seller before you start selling on Amazon Pan-EU is get your VAT registrations in those main 6 countries.
Okay, very good. Very detailed answer. Thank you very much. So what are the additional fees for importing goods to UK now after Brexit?
Yeah, sure. So when you're importing into the UK, usually your freight agent or your transport agent will take care of the fees. So usually, they'll have their shipping costs, their clearance costs, and you'll see a breakdown of the fee in the invoices that you receive. So it will show sort of as a disbursement what the different costs are. If you are importing into the UK as a non-UK based entity, then what you may now require in certain cases is something that's called an indirect representative. So that is a UK established business that can act as the customs representation that's needed at the point of clearance now. And the reason you might now need this is because since Brexit, both UK and also European customs authorities have become a lot more vigilant and aware of people importing with the right form of representation. So if you do require that representation and you're having issues at the border with delays or potentially having your items sent back, then I would say it's definitely worth talking to us so that we can look into why this is happening, and whether or not you need to integrate a indirect representative to help you.
Okay, very good. So are there any taxes or issues sellers should consider in addition to VAT and customs?
I mean, it's the beauty of e-commerce, really. It's quite simple as an overseas company, and again, I'll use the example in this case of a US business, but we could be talking about a Canadian business, we could be talking about an Australian business. I'm making this up now, I promise, but once you've got your entity set up, you don't have to worry about the statutory returns that you have to worry about in your country of incorporation in other marketplaces. So as a US company that wants to sell within Europe, really there's only one tax that you're going to need to account for, and that's VAT. So, getting the VAT registration, it takes different timeframes for different countries. But ultimately, with the right documents, it's fairly straightforward. And once you have your VAT registration completed, you need to do the filings. But what you won't need to do is statutory accounts or corporation tax in any of those countries. And yes, now with the introduction of the customs border with the UK and EU, you may need to also look into some of the customs issues that have come up and see whether or not you need any kind of additional services to help you on that front.
Okay, very good. And what should I do if Amazon store my products in countries I do not have VAT without me knowing it? I believe it's due to the settings in Seller Central, but in case it has happened, do you have any advice to give?
It's a difficult one because really, if you're not VAT registered, your stock should not be stored in a marketplace. That's sort of the bottom line if we're going by the letter of the law and really looking at the legislation. If you do have your stock in a country where you're not VAT registered, really you would need to become VAT registered, and you would need to become VAT registered from the point where your stock began being held in that country. So, for example, I have spoken to some sellers where this has happened, and it might have happened 6 months ago or so. And in that case, luckily there are services which we can offer, like retroactive filings or backdated filings is what they call them. So if you did breach a VAT liability maybe 6 months previous and you'd like to get your accounts up to speed and in line with the letter of the law, then we can offer backdated filings for sellers that would like to do that. But yeah, ultimately, unfortunately, there's not really too much you can do about it. And as I said, in line with the letter of the law, you would need a VAT registration and you'd need to do the filings in line with the filing period in that country.
Thank you, Piers. And one more time, if people want to get help with the European VAT, and probably AVASK can help with many other taxes in other countries, they can freely contact the Piers and the team below. In the description, you'll find the link. Thank you very much, Piers. It was a pleasure again to have you here on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Great to see you, and thanks to everyone that attended as well. Look forward to hearing from you soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. And now I would like to invite you to watch other video with AVASK. It was actually a 3-hour workshop where they covered not only European VAT, but also we talked about taxes in other regions and countries. So check this out.